So here they're saying cyclobutadiene is said to be what? Is it aromatic, aliphatic, anti-aromatic, or is it none of the above? Okay, so cyclobutadiene, it looks something like this, right? This is cyclobutadiene. I think this much you know. So what exactly are the classifications of organic compounds? That is very important. That's the first thing you need to know, that they can be of two types. They could either be aliphatic or they could be cyclic. Okay, so basically they could have an open chain, that's aliphatic, or they could have a closed chain, that is a ring like structure, that is cyclic. So in the case of cyclobutadiene, you can see there's a ring like structure, there's a closed chain structure. So yes, this is not going to be aliphatic. So first thing I want you to do is discard option B, aliphatic. Okay, now, when we talk about cyclic compounds, you know there's another factor called aromaticity, based on which I can divide it into two types, right? It could be either aromatic, or it could be anti-aromatic. Okay? And then of course there are some cyclic compounds which are neither aromatic nor anti-aromatic. So for them we have non-aromatic. Okay, non-aromatic. Right, cyclic compounds can be of three types. Right, so how do we decide whether it is anti-aromatic, non-aromatic, or aromatic? Okay, so for that we have something called Huckel's rules of aromaticity. So you have Huckel's rules. So the first, you have to look for certain characteristics in a compound. So first it has to be cyclic. Okay, so first it has to be cyclic, planar, right? It has to have conjugation within the ring. It has to have conjugation within the ring. These are the three conditions. If they fall under these three conditions, then you can talk about whether it is aromatic or anti-aromatic. But for a certain ring, let's say for a cyclohexane ring, okay, it has no conjugation, right? So for such a thing, it becomes non-aromatic, right? This is important. So let's check what is happening. Okay, so in the case of cyclobutadiene, you have a cyclic structure. It is planar, yes, very much, and it has conjugation within the ring. You can see pi-pi conjugation, right? So yes, it has all these three things. Now next step, we need to figure out whether it is aromatic or anti-aromatic. Okay, non-aromatic discarded, so aliphatic has been discarded, non-aromatic has been discarded too. Now we have to check whether it is aromatic or anti-aromatic. So for this, there are conditions again. You have to count the number of pi electrons within the ring. Okay, so if you have 4n pi electrons, or if you have 4n plus 2 pi electrons, okay, these are the two conditions. So what is n? N is nothing but it can take only whole number values, okay, 0, 1, 2, 3, so on. So there won't be 0 pi electrons, of course, so you can have minimum 2 pi electrons. Okay, so here n can be 1, 2, 3, so on. Here it can be 0, 1, 2, 3, so on, right? Okay, so if you have 4n plus 2 pi electrons, then it is aromatic in nature. However, if you have 4n pi electrons, then it becomes anti-aromatic in nature. And anti-aromatic compounds are unstable, whereas aromatic compounds are highly stable. Okay, so aromaticity is an extra stabilizing factor, whereas anti-aromaticity is an extra destabilizing factor. Okay, so now let's check in cyclobutadiene. We have cyclic, planar, we have conjugation, and we have 4 pi electrons, right? Which means this is going to be anti-aromatic in nature. So again, option A, aromatic, has also been discarded. Option D, none of the above, is not applicable, because the right answer here is going to be option C, anti-aromatic. Alright, so in this question, they're saying that you have 5 different alkyl halides of the formula C6H13Cl. Okay, how do you have 5 different alkyl halides of the same molecular formula? Basically, they are referring to the structural isomers of C6H13Cl, which they have been reducing it with zinc in the presence of dilute HCl, right? And when you reduce all 5 of these individually, you are getting the same alkane. You get the same alkane C6H14, which they've called X here, right? So you get the same alkane C6H14. They want you to provide the IUPAC name of X, which satisfies the above condition. Okay, cool. So what do we know? We know that when we use zinc in the presence of dilute HCl to carry out the reduction of an alkyl halide to an alkane, we basically don't have any sort of, carbocation rearrangement. There is no, there is no tampering with the parent change. There is no tampering with the arrangement of carbon atoms. So from the given options, if you can check which of these actually give you 5 different structural isomers for the same base chain of carbon atom, then you can say that the same option is going to be your right answer. Okay, let's see. Let's look at it in detail and reach to an answer. So first you have option A, hexane, or N-hexane is what we are talking about. N-hexane. So N-hexane is basically a straight chain 6-membered hydrocarbon, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. These are your 6 carbon atoms. Okay, I have not attached the hydrogen atoms because it's okay, right? Now, what are the different sort of structural isomers you could make on N-hexane? So this will, of course, we have to talk about positional isomers. So first position it could take is this, right? So either this is one or this is one. Both are the same, right? I've drawn both with yellow. They are the same. Now, second option you have is to put the chlorine here or here. Both are the same, correct? Okay. Now similarly, I'll draw the last one with blue. So you put the chlorine here or here. Okay. So you can see, because this is a straight chain, there are only 3 different structural isomers that you can get for N-hexane. Okay. 3 different positional isomers that you have. Okay. Done. Sorted. Okay, so which means this is not going to be the right answer to this question, right? So N-hexane is not it. N-hexane is not correct. Similarly, let's check for option B, 2-methylpentane. Okay, so option B is 2-methylpentane, right? So let's draw what does 2-methylpentane look like? So you have 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. You have 5 carbon atoms. On the second carbon atom you have a methyl group. Okay, cool. Now let's see. So what do you have? Okay, now let's start putting the chlorine atoms. Look at this very carefully. So first thing you could do is you could put the chlorine atom here or you could put it here. Same thing. Okay, so this is 1. Second one, what you could do is you could put the chlorine atom here, right? I'm just going to start erasing whatever we're done with. Okay, this is the second option for you to put the chlorine atom. So this is going to be 2, right? So you've seen 2. Then what else? Then you can put the chlorine atom here. So this is 3. Then other thing you could do is you could put the chlorine atom here. So this is 4. And then the last thing you could do is you could put the chlorine atom here, which is 5. Right? So which means here you actually got 5 different positional isomers on the same base chain. Yes? So yes, this is the one that is going to be the right answer. So all different, your C6H13Cl, we've covered all different options in the 5 isomers that we have drawn. Correct? So each of these, if you reduce each of this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 alkyl halides with zinc in the presence of dilute HCl, you will get this very same alkane, this X, right? So 2-methylpentane is the correct IUPAC name of X. So B is correct, but since we are on the topic of concept revision, let's also check for options C and D, right? So option C is saying 2,3-dimethylbutane. Okay. So where is it? Option C is 2,3-dimethylbutane, right? Okay. So let's draw 1, 2, 3, 4 carbons. Then you have 1 and 2. So you have 2,3-dimethylbutane, right? Okay. So now see, first thing you could do is you could place the chlorine atoms on one of these carbons. So 1, 2, 3, 4. You put the chlorine atom on any of these carbons, you're going to get the same hydrocarbon. You're going to get the same alkyl halide, right? Because they are all chemically in the same environment. So you put it here. You put it on any of those, it will become 1-chloro 2,3-dimethyl-butane. Okay? So yes, that is sorted. Then what else do you have? Then let's see. Then another option you have is to put it on this carbon or on this carbon. It's going to be the same thing. So yes, you can put it on any one of these places and you will get the same alkyl halide, which means here you have only 2 positional isomers possible, right? Okay, so here you have 2 positional isomers possible. So this is not going to be your answer, right? This is going to be discarded. Then lastly, what do you have? Lastly, you have 2,2-dimethyl-butane. Okay, let's check for that also. Then you have option D, 2,2-dimethyl-butane, right? Okay, so now let's check 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2. Okay, now here what is happening? So here you have 1, 2, 3. You have these 3 carbons which are the same chemical environment, or basically if you replace one hydrogen and add a chlorine atom here, you are going to get the same thing, right? So either of these 3 will give you the same same molecule, right? So you can put it anywhere. So you put chlorine here. Okay, it's the same as saying you put it here or here. 1. After that, what do you have? You can put the chlorine atom on this carbon, on the secondary carbon. So that is 2. And then the third thing you could do is put it here. So this is 3, right? So here you have 3 different positional isomers. Again, not 5, 3, which means A, C and D, all 3 of them can be discarded. The right answer to this question is going to be option B, 2-methylpentane. Okay, so here you have a reaction in which you need to find out what are the products A and B. What is the reaction? You have CH3, CH2, CH2, COOH. What is this? This is nothing but butanoic acid, which is allowed to react with sodium hydroxide in the presence of heat and calcium oxide, right? And as a result, you get A plus B, and you need to find out what is A and what is B in the product set. Okay, so see, the moment you see the reagent NaOH and CaO, when you see this reagent, you know we are talking about the soda lime. Okay, so this reagent is called soda lime, and this is basically a decarboxylating agent. This is a decarboxylating agent. What does it mean? It means that basically here you have butanoic acid, so you have CH3, CH2, CH2, COOH. Right? The job of this decarboxylating agent is to remove the carboxylate group, right? How does it do that? It does that by removing CO2, that is nothing but carbon dioxide from the given carboxylic acid. So carbon dioxide is kicked out from the given carboxylic acid, as a result of which your carboxylic acid now becomes an alkane. So you have CH3, CH2, CH2, CH3. Okay, so basically this hydrogen went on to this carbon. Roughly that's how we condensed it. Okay, so now carbon dioxide is kicked out, and that carbon dioxide goes on to react with sodium hydroxide. So you get Na2CO3, sodium carbonate. Okay, now one thing, very important thing you need to remember about using soda lime as a reagent is that N carbon becomes N-1 carbon. That is, N carbon carboxylic acid or N carbon acid becomes N-1 carbon alkane. What does it mean? It means one carbon atom is going to reduce. So if you started with a 4-membered acid, you will end up with a 3-membered alkane. Similarly, for 5, if you start with a 5-membered acid, you will end up with a 4-membered alkane. Okay, so if you need to make you need to keep this in mind. If you need to make a 7-membered alkane, you need to use a 8-membered carboxylic acid. Okay, roughly that is what we need to know. Alright, so here we were asked about what is A and what is B. So A is an alkane and B is sodium carbonate. So what is the alkane? We have a 3-membered alkane, that is propane. So A is propane and B is sodium carbonate, as suggested by option B. So option B is going to be the right answer to this question. So here they're asking what is going to be the nature of the aqueous solution after coal-based electrolysis, right? Is it going to be acidic, alkaline, neutral, or could it be either of these 3? Let's see. So what exactly is the, like what is the reaction that happens in coal-based electrolysis, or how do you start with coal-based electrolysis? So you basically have RCOONA plus H2O, right? This is your reagent and you subject it to electrolysis, and I'm not going to write the products. Okay, I'm not writing the products. Let's look at the entire reaction and let's reach the products instead of simply writing down the products. So what do you have? You have sodium salt of a carboxylic acid. So you have sodium carboxylate in water and you are electrolyzing this mixture. That is basically you are passing electricity through this mixture, right? Okay, so now let's talk about two different parts. So you have the anode and you have the cathode, right? So you have started off with RCOONA in water. Now the moment you put in water, you have a salt, it's going to get ionized, right? So what are the two ions that you get? You get Na plus and you get RCOO minus. Okay, so this RCOO minus rushes to the anode. Okay, it rushes to the anode where you have RCOO minus. Now here it loses an electron, right? So this loses an electron to give you RCOO dot. What is the dot? Dot is nothing but a radical. Okay, so you have a radical that has been generated. We have lost an electron. So from the lone pair, we lost an electron and we have a radical generated. Okay, cool. So now you have a radical generated. So now what happens? Basically, if you look at it like this, this is the radical. Okay, now here what happens is the radical shifts like this. Okay, and this bond breaks homolytically, because of which you have one electron, right? You had a pair of electrons in the bond, so one electron is gone with R and the other shifts onto the carbon, right? And that radical which is on the carbon will now shift here, and as a result of this you can make a bond. Okay, so basically instead of having all this, now ultimately what you get is this, right? A radical is gone plus R dot, the radical R dot. Okay, okay. So now you have an alkyl radical, and what is this? This is nothing but our good old friend CO2. Okay, so you have CO2 that is released at anode. CO2 gas is released at anode. What else is happening? You have R dot, right? Now this radical is going to find another radical similar to itself, right? And basically, right, now what happens? You have two free radicals and they will combine together to give you R. Okay, so yes, you get, let's put a face to this R. Let's say that my R here is methyl group. Okay, so basically I have CH3COONA as my given salt, which is nothing but sodium acetate. So if I start with sodium acetate, my alkyl radical is nothing but methyl, because of which the alkane that I get is going to be CH3CH3, that is nothing but C2H6, that is ethane. Okay, so at anode what have I received? I have received C2H6 gas, I have CO2 gas. Cool, sorted. Now what else is left? You have Na plus in solution, right? Now this Na plus goes to the cathode. Okay, you have Na plus at the cathode, but also you have water at the cathode, right? So this electron that was released is going to now help reduce one of these two. So either Na plus or H2O. Which one is it going to be? Of course, it's going to be H2O. Why is it so obvious? You will study more details of it in electrochemistry. For now, I can say that H2O is going to accept electrons. So I'll say 2 and 2. This will give you H2, right? Plus OH minus. Let's balance this. So what do you have? Yes, this is what you get. Right, is this balanced? Let's see, 1 second. So you have 4, 4, 2, 2. Yes, this is balanced. Okay, so yes, this is what you have. You have 2 H2O accepting 2 electrons and getting reduced to H2 plus 2 OH minus. Okay, so H2O reacted, H2O got reduced to give us all this, but you still have Na plus, you have OH minus, these two combine to give you NaOH, and this NaOH is going to be in the solution, right? So now let's come back to the reaction and let's complete it. So you have RCOONA plus H2O. How many H2O? 2 H2O. What did we do? We did electrolysis, right? We did electrolysis to get what? We got alkane, we got carbon dioxide, we got H2. and we also got NaOH, which is in solution. If you are very particular about balancing it, go ahead and balance it. I find that qualitative understanding is enough, so I'm going to leave it like this, right? Okay, so now what was the question? They wanted to know what is going to be the nature of the aqueous solution. What is the nature of the aqueous solution? That is going to be determined by this NaOH. NaOH is a strong base, so the solution is going to be strongly alkaline in nature, which means option B, alkaline, is going to be the right answer to this question. Okay, so here they're saying which of the following alkenes will react faster with H2 under catalytic hydrogenation conditions. Okay, so before you dive into the question, before you look at the options, you need to understand that the moment we talk about catalysis, or here when you are talking about catalytic hydrogenation or catalysis in terms of hydrogenation, everything that is a catalyst, everything that is related to a catalyst is very important. It is a surface phenomenon. Okay, you need to understand this. What does it mean? You will study about this in the further chapters, but for now what I want you to understand is that you have a surface, right? You have a catalyst surface. Okay, onto this catalyst surface, what I've done is I have flooded the catalyst surface with H2, right? So now you have H2. Okay, these circles in yellow that you see, these are H2 gas, right? So this is dihydrogen gas. Now what happens is when you have an alkene that is incoming, which you need to reduce. Okay, so you have an incoming alkene that looks like this. Okay, if you have an incoming alkene which is crowded, okay, which has steric crowding on this side, in this you have methyl groups on all sides, because of which what happens, because of which you can see that there is crowding here, right? There is crowding, so the double bond is not able to interact with the hydrogen, which means the hydrogen that is going to reduce the double bond is not able to effectively interact with it, right? So what do you need? You need lesser steric crowding. You need lesser steric crowding on the double bond, which means if you have less bulky groups, or if you have smaller groups attached to the carbon on the double bond, then it's going to be easier for the hydrogen to have its reducing action in the case of catalytic hydrogenation. Okay, so let's see. Okay, now let's say that in each of these cases, right, in each of these cases, here I have a surface on which I have absorbed the hydrogen, and I need this side to interact with the surface and get reduced. Okay, so now what happens here? See, you can see methyl group, very bulky. There is steric crowding, so that is why hydrogen cannot interact with it effectively. However, if you look at this side, right, now here, if I turn the molecule, or if I show you another perspective, here it is comparatively less crowded, because of which, yes, here you can have effective hydrogenation, effective reduction, and if the reduction is effective, then it will react faster. Simple as that. Okay, so that is what we want. So basically we want the alkene which has the least steric crowding. So far this is in the top running because you have two hydrogens there. Okay, two hydrogens on the side, on the same side, right? Again, one very important thing is that here what happens is a syn addition or cis addition, right, which means both the hydrogens are added to the same side. Okay, so you need to have less steric crowding on one side to ensure that the addition is easier. So here, yes, you have two hydrogens on the same side, very less steric crowding, very freely the addition can happen. Okay, that is one thing. Let's look at option B. So option B has methyl groups on all four sides. This example of the hexene that I had taken, it's the same thing here, which means it has a lot of steric crowding and it will not be an effective reduction here. Okay, so compared to option A, option B is not going to be that fast. So no, option B can be discarded. Now, what about option C? See, you have one hydrogen here, right? And then on the same side, you have methyl group. So still there is crowding. There is crowding, which means this is not acceptable. Not acceptable. Like compared to option A, still it's losing, right? Okay, so in case of option D, we have two hydrogens. Okay, interesting. We have two hydrogens, but as you can see that they are not on the same side of the double bond. So the syn addition nature that we need is not going to happen even here. Okay, here also on the same side of the double bond, if I'm checking, I have one methyl group and one hydrogen. Same, it's the same on the top or the bottom side, which means any side if it reacts, it is still going to have steric crowding compared to option A, which means option D can also be discarded. So the right answer to this question, the one where we observe fastest reduction or fastest addition of hydrogen atoms on the double bonded carbons, is going to be option A.